the chair, would I recognize himself for 5 minutes? Mr. Bezos, thank you for being here today. In your opening statement, I reviewed your written testimony. You indicated, and I'll just quote, that Amazon accounts for less than 1% of the $25 trillion global retail market and less than 4% of retail in the U.S. End quote, when you refer to retail, I take it, based on the empirical studies I've reviewed, you're referring to a broad definition of retail that includes restaurants, bars, gas stations, so it's a fairly all-encompassing view of retail. I wonder if you know what percentage of Amazon's sales are represented in the terms of online retail sales, the e-commerce market stream.
The figures I've seen for, I don't, with all respect, I don't accept that e-commerce is a different market, but as a different channel, what I've seen is sort of 30 to 40% is the outside studies that I've seen where Amazon's share of that e-commerce channel.
And that's consistent with the data that I have seen. The latest figure I saw was 40%. And so in terms of how we define it, whether it's a stream or a channel, nonetheless, I do think that, just factually, it's important. It's an important distinction that I want to make sure we clear here. Obviously, I suspect you understand more than most that the early stages of a startup where entrepreneurs are undertaking risks to bring their products and services to market. Over the course of our investigation, we've heard directly from startups who rely on Amazon services, and that includes, obviously, Representative Jayapal's questions, Representative Buck, my colleague from Colorado, with respect to concerns about the way in which Amazon uses confidential information. But we've also heard that, not just with respect to the marketplace, but Amazon's cloud computing arm, AWS, the notion that that computing arm essentially identifies startups' best technologies and rolls out replica products and services. So, Mr. Bezos, does Amazon use confidential information that companies share via AWS to build competing services?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. AWS does often, they do keep expanding their services. AWS started, 15 years ago. We invented this entire category.
Let me just clarify that, Mr. Bezos. I appreciate that. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. But last week, one of Amazon's former engineers posted online that he and his team, quote, proactively identified growing businesses on AWS, that they built competing products, and that they targeted those products to the businesses' customers. And there's been public reporting on that strategy. So I guess I wonder if you can comment on that and how you would account for those statements.
Well, I think there may be categories, some databases of different kinds and so on, where we see that it's an important product for customers, and we make our own product offering in that arena. But it doesn't mean we stop servicing the other companies that are also making those products. We have competitors using AWS, and we work very hard to make them successful. Netflix is one example, Hulu is another, and so on.
I think the concern, Mr. Bezos, with respect, is that the pattern emerges across the different components in Amazon, whether it's the marketplace or whether it's the cloud service, as I mentioned. In addition, there was an article, I'm sure you're aware, in the Wall Street Journal regarding the Alexa Fund, that according to news reports, Amazon's venture capital fund, the Alexa Fund, had invested in a number of different companies. I believe you're familiar with the Alexa Fund investing, for example, in Defined Crowd Corp. Does that ring a bell?
No, sir, I'm afraid it doesn't.
Okay, well, I'll represent to you, according to the Wall Street Journal, and I'll just quote from them, when Amazon Incorporated's venture capital fund invested in Defined Crowd Corp, it gained access to the technology startup's finances and other confidential information. Nearly 4 years later, in April, Amazon's cloud computing unit launched an artificial intelligence product that does almost exactly what Defined Crowd does, said Defined Crowd founder and chief executive Daniel Braja. Does that refresh your recollection? Are you aware of those allegations?
I read that article, but I didn't remember that piece of it. I apologize for that. I don't know the specifics of that situation, and I would be happy to get back to your office with more information about that.
Well, I would appreciate, I certainly would welcome that, and to the extent that you all can follow up with the subcommittee with respect to this particular article and the different episodes that are referenced, both in terms of Defined Crowd Corp. There's also another company called Nucleus that you may be familiar with. The reason why I ask these questions, the reason why it matters, Mr. Bezos, to me, is that we are very concerned about this innovation kill zone that seems to be emerging. I represent Boulder and Fort Collins, two of the fastest growing and most innovative tech hubs in the country, and entrepreneurs and founders shared their stories with this committee during one of our field hearings, actually a field hearing that we held at the University of Colorado Law School just earlier this year. And they are extremely dependent on big technology firms, including in terms of investment and capital, yet they live in constant fear that the platforms could steal their core technologies or ideas, making it impossible to compete because of those existing advantages. So I see my time has expired, but we will certainly be following up with respect to the episodes that I referenced. With that, I would yield back. Gentleman's time has expired.